Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss mystical works of literature and how they relate to recovery. We hope you enjoy today's podcast episode.
Hello, this is Buddy C. Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. Today we have Kate and Brian and Drew and Lou and Oscar. Good to have you guys. Today we'll be talking about the 8th step and how in our 12-step journey, first, how we work the 8th step ourselves and how we work it with our sponsees and how our sponsor worked it with us. Then any Taoist text we have that would relate to the 8th step. Before we get to that, there's two things I want to talk about. One would be a resource that we have, most of those at buddyc.org, and a synchronistic moment for the day. The resource I want to talk about is Sober Meditations. You can find Sober Meditations at sobermeditations.org. You can also find them in your podcast aggregator as well. They were distributed as a podcast. We had a app for a long time. Some of you may still have the app, but you may or may not be able to access all of those. There's over 400, all different topics, including the steps and all kinds of things there. So take a look at that if you're so inclined. Secondly, we talk about a synchronistic moment every week. The one we have today, I guess we could call it an intuitive moment. When I was meditating this morning, Oscar hasn't been here for a while, and I've thought a couple of times about that I needed to email him. Being we're on the 8th step, it's been probably a couple of months, Oscar, I think, since you've been here.
Yeah, it's more than I thought. We were somewhere in the first 3 steps, I think.
When I was meditating, you came to mind, and I said, I need to email Oscar, but I said, being I'm thinking about him, he'll probably be at the meeting today. Then, what did you experience, Oscar?
I had a meditation this morning. My morning was a little bit earlier than your morning is. But I had a meditation, and I thought, oh, Buddy is going to send me an email because I didn't come for so long. But he's not going to send it. He's just going to wait for me to show up or not. Then I thought, okay, I'm going to show up the afternoon, but if it doesn't work out the way it goes, I'm going to send him an email that it's okay. So I don't know. It was huge.
I think part of this is that we just get more intuitive about life in general, just more intuitive about all things. We're willing to be open to, not closed-minded, not closed off to. The things that we've given up control, we can experience these same kind of moments. But if I think I'm in charge, it's not happening. If I think I'm in charge, no way. Okay, let's move on to our topic for today, Step 8. Step 8 reads, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. I'll talk for a second about how I work this step. Hopefully you guys will have some input because we all probably have a little different interpretation. I saw something yesterday when I was reviewing this that I have never really noticed before. I always emphasize the part in the step about making the list, that we made a list of the persons we had harmed. Now, that list, these are the persons that we think we have harmed, whether real or imagined. Because I found out as I was making my amends that there were harms that I had imagined that weren't really there sometimes. My sponsor had to help me say, okay, don't worry about that, do this, and help me to filter through and explain to me the things that were harms that I needed to do something about, that I needed to address. Because a lot of times I can be harder on myself than I should be. Granted, I have to address all the harms that I have done. This is preparing me for making my amends. But right now, all we're doing is making the list. That's what I emphasized out of step 8. That's what I heard. Actually, if you look at step 8 in the 12 and 12, I was going over this with Scotty M earlier. We're talking about this. The second part of step 8 really is not discussed that much, or not in my circles, or discussed any at all. First part's making the list. Second part is becoming willing to make the amend. There's 2 other steps that have a similar verbiage. You've got 2 where you came to believe. You've got 6 when you realized you were entirely ready. Then you've got 8 where you become willing. And 11, you seek. But on the becoming side, really, you've got 2 and 8. How do we become willing not only to make a few of the amends, but to make them all? There's a big difference between willing to make some and willing to make them all. Became willing to make them all. That's the part in the Tao I want to talk about today, is how the Tao can help us with becoming willing. I think part of that is we change when we take action. We've learned that. All through recovery, we learn that we act our way into right thinking rather than think our way into right acting. When I put pen to paper, and of course, I use my 4th step as a start for what I use in the 8th step, but it's more than that. When I start making the list, that action helps me to become willing. It's a compassionate action for me to start to write the list because I'm preparing to live compassionately in more of my life, compassionately toward others and me by making the amends in step 9. It's interesting in the 12 and 12 on step 8, the word willingness is never mentioned in the entire text other than the step itself, just at the title. But he does say on page 80 in the 12 and 12, first full paragraph, and I'll just read the whole paragraph. While the purpose of making restitution to others is paramount, it's equally necessary that we extricate from an examination of our personal relations every bit of information about ourselves and our fundamental difficulties that we can, since defective relations with other human beings have nearly always been the immediate cause of our woes, including our alcoholism. No field of investigation could yield more satisfying and valuable rewards than this one. Calm, thoughtful reflection upon personal relations can deepen our insight. We can go far beyond those things which were superficially wrong with us, to see those flaws which were basic flaws which sometimes were responsible for the whole pattern of our lives. Thoroughness, we have found, will pay, and pay handsomely. As we're making our list, calm, thoughtful reflection upon the personal relations can deepen our insight. So as I'm making my 8-step list, I sit with each person. I may ask a few questions as I'm doing that. What has my harm been to this person? What is the harm that's maybe been to myself in this interaction? What have I held on to that I should have not be holding from this interaction? Just calm, thoughtful reflection. Do what was mentioned after you did your 5th step. Wasn't after the 5th step where you talk about where you sit, do a little reflection. Have I left anything out? Can I really listen to myself in those situations, not be all in my head with it? Just sit with it. Maybe do the 3 things I like to do, which are my 3 treasures. I open my heart to that person that I've harmed or that I feel I've harmed. I send them love. How can I be of service to them today? I want to see my harms clearly. This is not a list to just hurry up and do. It's not your checklist of things to do. Okay, I've got that harm. I've got this one. I've got this. See the difference? Your list comes from listening. Cake.
Buddy, you made me think about in the 8th step, the whole reason that I have anybody on my list is because I must be thinking that my actions, any action I've taken in the past against them, was harmful. I may have purposefully done a harmful action. I may have done an action I now believe is harmful that I didn't really believe that it was harmful in the past. I've changed my mind about how I want to behave in the future. I think that was also an important part of the 8th step for me, was realizing how my actions had changed, how I wanted to live had changed. So I didn't want to behave in the ways that I used to behave towards those people. And I know that's not the point of the 8th step, because the point of it is to help the people, or is to make a list of those we'd harmed and separate our personal, maybe we're mad at them too, and we're separating that from being willing to make amends to them, taking that part out of it. But I also found it very important to look at how I no longer found things I used to find acceptable to be ways I wanted to live anymore.
Thank you, Kate. Lou?
Buddy, when you were talking about not just going down the list in the 4th step, that corresponds to Dow 64, the Stephen Mitchell, rather, portion of that says, rushing into action, you fail. Trying to grasp things, you lose them. Forcing a project to completion, you ruin what was almost ripe. There is that ripeness, that there has to be that willingness. You can't say, okay, today I'm going to do this in regards to my 8th step. I'm on the list on step 4, number 6. It's the timing, the ripeness of it, seems to me.
Thank you, Lou. We're becoming something more in the 8th step. I want to read something to you. I'm going to put a link in the chat for an AI companion that I'm helping build, which will be a standalone, but right now we're still building it for 12-step recovery. His name is Gus. There will be a female version. Gus's acronym is Glad You're Suffering. He's not the chat AI of I'm okay, you're okay BS. It's a first person in recovery is the way he's posed. He's not as a sponsor, but my sponsor told me, or I remember that kind of a thing. He will remind you that he's an AI. But I did ask him, my question was, in the AA steps, we see in step 2 and step 8, we're coming to something. What other steps have the same type of change? That's a pretty in-depth question. His response, yeah, I remember noticing that too. Step 2 says we came to believe, and step 8 says we became willing. There's something gradual happening there. Not we instantly believed or we perfectly forgave. It's movement. A few other steps feel like the same kind of shift to me. He talks about step 6, step 3, step 1. Then he goes on down to say, what stood out to me over time was how many of the steps were written as transitions instead of achievements. Came to believe, became willing, were entirely ready. It feels less like passing a test and more like being slowly changed by the process. Wow, that is good. Of course, he goes on, but still, it's good. Kate?
That was a very in-depth answer from him.
I'm scared. It scares me because
I'm kind of impressed by that. I'm impressed by him.
I am too. I did give direction, but nothing like, I didn't say, hey, these steps are progress. I didn't do any of that. I'll put a link in the chat. Anyone who uses it, please message me if you, whatever issues you find, or if it's quirky about something it's replying to. It's going to be much more in depth than what is here now with options. It's going to be free. I hope to have that up in I'll probably fully done a couple of months. Just depends.
That question you asked made me think about the 15th verse of the Tao Te Ching. Do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself? The master doesn't seek fulfillment, not seeking, not expecting. She is present and can welcome all things. That's the second part of verse 15, the Stephen Mitchell translation.
I love that line, Kate, of remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself.
Right.
That is so Tao and so true. With this willingness and writing our list, there's a lot of acceptance here, because if we are not seeing ourselves more clearly, we're not going to see how we harmed others. And I see that progressing over time, that I see harms that I had done later in the process and still may see something that, oh, I didn't even realize because I wasn't ready to see it. I think it's important that if we're working with a sponsee and there's things that are blatant, that you allow your sponsee to come to that conclusion. For me, this way I approach it, other than being overly aggressive. I've seen sponsees leave when sponsors insist on them making amends that they don't feel they need to make. Not that they don't need to, maybe they're not ready to make them yet. They're not able to see that yet. Oscar?
Yeah, in the sponsor line where I work in, we find peace with this problem by making 3 lists. One list of people you can make amends immediately, one maybe later, and one never. So you have 3 lists. You just start with the first list. When you arrive at step 9, you start with the first list. You do the ones immediately, you do the ones, most of them, the people you love. You harmed people you love. And those are the easy ones. The people you hate, you harmed people you hate, is a bit more difficult. You postpone them, but it's fine to postpone them, because through the process of making amends, you sort out the effects, or you learn the effects. You learn how good it is and how healthy it feels and how healing it is. Then when you're at the end of the list 1, you will be ready to go to list 2. If you do list 2 also, you will be ready for the third list at a given time, at the time that is there for. But I completely agree that you should never force anybody to do amends. Don't do them. If you don't want them, don't do them. Just put them on the list. I don't do amends. But there is a huge difference between step 9 and 8. If you are doing step 8, you don't have to make the amends yet. Then you come with the question, are you willing? Are you willing to make amends? So there's willingness. Yes, I'm willing, but I'm not going to do it yet. It's nice to meditate in step 8 on become willing to do it with the knowledge that you don't have to do it in step 8. You just
Right.
making the list and becoming willing. Then in step 9, you think, okay, no, I'm not going to do that because he did this terrible things when I was a kid. Yeah, I'm not going to him. He has to come to
Yes.
me.
Mhm. Yeah, we have to keep in mind that it's not who harmed us, but who we harmed.
Yeah, but we like to turn it around, right?
Yes, of course.
They harmed us.
Yes. Thank you, Oscar.
Thank you.
Brian?
I'm glad Oscar shared before I did. I had a lunch with a sponsee Thursday. We were talking about some amends that we still had hanging out there. Specifically, we were talking about Mother's Day. I was poking at him a little bit. I said, how would you feel if we were there eating at a place next door to Kroger grocery store? And I said, how would you feel if you ran into your mom at Kroger? Would you feel okay about that? I was honest with him. He knows that I haven't spoke to my mom in, oh, geez, probably close to 15 years. I've got a brother I haven't talked to in probably 15 years. I don't even know where they're at. I was just really honest with him about I don't know how to unpack that. My greatest fear is if I was to come to them, there were some tremendous harms, but they're in a religious sect part of religion that they just absolutely think that they have the answer. They do no wrongs. My greatest fear is if I was to come to them, that their first response would be, I've been praying for you. And I'm just not there to receive that.
You couldn't just say thank you, Brian?
To be honest, that's probably a pretty good answer. Damn it.
Maybe add an I love you in there.
There's harms that were done that I'm still suffering through. So then I got a dose of that Thursday. Friday, I go in the bank, and typically I don't go in the bank. There's a lady there who attends church with them. Anyway, long story short, I refer to them as moles because you hear like in Intel, there's a mole. I get bits and pieces of information of what's going on. So she shares with me that essentially my grandmother is not long for this world. I haven't spoken to her in that amount of time either. We had a falling out because she came to me around the falling out with my mother and attacked me over it. How do you unpack that? It was like I had this on Thursday, mulling it over a little bit, and then I get a freaking second dose on Friday. Then, damn it, I show up here on Saturday, and now we're freaking talking about this. I'm like, here we go again. I do know as far as I'm real quick to make snarky comments about what I can do is not make those comments, not make sarcastic comments, and be open and just sit with it. I think where I struggle with my grandmother is my grandfather. I was abused by him. When he passed away, he was an angry, dry, drunk, and I had to remove him from my life, and he passed away. I was deep in addiction then. I've got sobriety now, but I feel like that's playing out with my grandmother. Who knows? Maybe I just need to be willing and
It's
say,
no accident that this is coming up.
yeah, probably not. I'm going to stay away from the damn grocery store for a couple of weeks.
I would highly suggest just hibernating so they'll have to come to you. Have you considered just praying for each of them
Yeah,
once a day?
I have. I've been doing that. I've got
You do it every day, though? Like a consistent?
I do. I can say that. I get up and I pray for folks. I have what I call my coffee and surrender time. I just sit and I pray for people that I envy or that I resent. I'm real quick to not pray and say, I want everything for this guy that I would want for myself. Even though he's a dirt bag, I'm showing up surrendered with my hat in my hand. I try not to do that. Pray for him, pray for his kids. Just show up empty with no ego.
You having these circumstances may be a result of that.
Yeah, could be.
Because it's coming to light. It's very much like the quote that Kate talked about allowing the mud to settle. You may be allowing the mud to settle in those relationships. The answers start arising as to what you need to do.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know, but that would sound appropriate to me. Then one day you're face to face with them without any kind of plan to do that whatsoever. It's time.
Now you give me a bunch of damn anxiety.
Now you got something else to let go of.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. I'll add that to the prayer list. I got to pray against my resentment against Buddy.
I like a lot of people to be angry with me, so I get prayed for. The more people praying for me, the better. I used to kid my home group with that. Some of them would get pissed off at me about something. I say, yeah, get pissed off at me. I want you praying for me.
Sorry to be long-winded, but I just
No, don't worry about it.
share that.
Uh,
Thank you.
I'll cut half of it out, so it doesn't matter. We find freedom in acknowledging the harm we have done to others. We start seeing patterns of our defects and our harms. Focus on making the list, not how to make the amend. Drew?
Yeah, I didn't really realize it until we were talking about it, but I think one thing that the eighth step has helped me out with indirectly in sobriety is going through the eighth step and ninth step, practicing looking at my behavior, looking at intentional things I did wrong or unintentional, but never apologized for it or anything. Looking at all of that objectively and saying, yeah, I screwed up here, I screwed up here, then actually doing something about it. I think that's been really good practice for continuing to do that in real life as I do those things. Example would be when I'm at work and I screw up at work, whether it's rarely intentional. Usually it's completely unintentional, but still I screwed up. My old habit would be to either try to cover it up so nobody finds out or craft a really good excuse or try to blame somebody else. When I would do those things, those would fill me up with fear of being found out or shame or embarrassment or guilt. Those are the feelings I always wanted to escape from, which would lead to doing addictive behaviors. By actually going through the steps and looking at my actions, apologizing for them, that's been leading me to do more of that in day-to-day life. So I screw up at work and I say, oh, yeah, I screwed that up. Thanks for pointing that out. Here's how I can make this right. Let me do that right away. Or what do you think is the best thing for me to do to fix this? Come at it with an attitude of, yes, I messed up. Sorry to cause you extra work or not get this done. What can I do to make it right? I think that's a real benefit of doing the steps, is not just to address things I did in the past, but build that practice of addressing things as they come up in day-to-day life. I've never really thought of it as I'm making amends, but it is making amends as quickly as possible for something that I messed up on. Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. Kate?
This is verse 16. We were just on 15, but now I'm on 16. This is from the Tao Te Ching. Okay. It's empty your mind of all thoughts. Let your heart be at peace. Watch the turmoil of beings, but contemplate their return. Each separate being in the universe returns to the common source. Returning to the source is serenity. If you don't realize the source, you stumble in confusion and sorrow. When you realize where you come from, you naturally become tolerant, disinterested, amused, kind-hearted as a grandmother, dignified as a king. Immersed in the wonder of the Tao, you can deal with whatever life brings you. That would help me focus myself, that I could focus on other people being separate, but also part of the common source or of the Tao. I would want to be at peace with them and at peace with myself. It would help me become tolerant and see that things might not be as serious as I'm taking them. Because I can sometimes be very sensitive about things that are not always as important as I think they are. Or maybe it was like a major thing they did to me, but maybe I did a major thing to them too. Or maybe it was just a small thing I did to them and they did a major thing to me. But then I just have to think, I just have to make amends of this be willing to make amends for this small thing I did. I am being tolerant of them, and then it's just up to them to get in line with the Tao sense. Not
That doesn't sound very Taoist, does
not
it?
very Tao, does it? That's
Yeah.
not me naturally becoming tolerant, is it? But I'm still working on myself.
Thank you, Kate. This is not about your list of apologies to make. We'll talk about how to make the amend next week, but it's an amend. It's not an apology. The purpose of an apology is to say, I'm sorry for my behavior. I think more of the purpose of an amend is how can we mend this relationship? It's easy if I'm just saying, I'm sorry, MFer, and go on to the next person. There's nothing there if I'm just saying, I'm sorry, whatever. But it takes real honesty, real compassion for others and myself if mending a relationship. That doesn't mean I got to be best friends with people that I don't like. It just means I don't have to be their enemy. Big difference between that and just apologizing for my behavior, even if they might have deserved it, kind of thing. There's all kinds of ways we get twisted with that. Thank you, Kate. Drew?
Verse 79 in the Tao Te Ching, I feel, is built for this topic. Failure is an opportunity. If you blame someone else, there is no end to the blame. Therefore, the master fulfills her own obligations and corrects her own mistakes. She does what she needs to do and demands nothing of others. If that doesn't speak to all of this, I really don't know what does. One thing that stuck out to me is the last line, demands nothing of others. I feel like doing these parts of the steps, it's easy for me to not verbally demand, but internally demand that the other person to whom I'm making amends tells me, okay, we're all square now, or oh, it was no big deal, or I want them to tell me, give me positive feedback. But it's not healthy for me. It's not my job to make an amend and then wait for them to respond the way I want them to respond. I think that can be counterproductive sometimes.
Oscar?
No, I had nothing. Thanks.
Thought I saw a hand raised there. That was not an intuitive moment, was it? Thank you, Oscar. This is an idea I don't think that we've explored with step 8. In verse 36, Gai Fu Fang, that which shrinks must first expand, that which fails must first be strong, that which is cast down must first be raised. Before receiving, there must be giving. Before I can allow the mending of a relationship or a relationship to be strong, let's say, or I have to first allow it to be at flux. I have to allow it before the relationship can be mended. I have to address the harm before it can be let go of. That's part of what we're doing in the 8th step. In making the list, we're addressing the harm, that thing that is strong that we want to diminish. The willingness is, I think, part of that is starting to be able to notice that, to accept that I have a harm to mend. Because if I think everyone else is doing this to me and I'm the victim, it's not going to work. Not going to work. That's why, for me, it's easy to get caught up in it when I'm talking to a sponsee. But my first question when there's anything going on, any kind of conflict, always needs to come back to what is my part? What is your part in this if I'm working with someone? So what's your part in your fuss with your wife? Well, I said, no, what are you doing? Because we can't change her, but you have the possibility. I don't know if you can, but we have the possibility of you change. I'm not that hard. I am in my head, but I soften it up before it gets out. Brian?
I just had this picture of you saying, you and I both know she's unchangeable. And then the ditch.
Yep.
I had one like that.
Yeah. If we can't start seeing the situation as it is, we can't see what's there to amend for, or what even needs mending. So we have to the way we let it expand is by us being able to notice it's there and see it more clearly.
Being open.
Stop fighting anything and anyone. Stop being afraid you're going to be taken advantage of. I don't know how many times I used that as a reason for me to argue and fight when there was no possibility of that whatsoever in that relationship. We're going to take advantage of me, but in my head, I use that fear as motivation many times. But I couldn't see clearly, so it wasn't possible for me to mend that relationship or to handle the argument, discussion, whatever, in the way that would be best for all. From verse 71, to know that you do not know is best. I would definitely apply here. You could start with the inquiry of, in my relationship with whoever, what am I not seeing clearly? Why do I resent them? Why do I refuse to mend this harm? Guys, I think that's all I have. If there's nothing else, you guys have a great week and hope to see you next week. Thank you.
Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google recovery calendars. Hope you put some of these resources to use and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends in recovery.